Oh, well, that's a difficult one. Yeah, no, my name's Mike. So I'm Mike Child and I'm 65. So my profession is finished, really. I'm retired. But I was a teacher. So I'm teaching ceramics for the last 20 years. But I've worked within social sciences, I suppose. So I've worked as a community arts worker in a community centre for 25 years. And I've also been a social worker, so I've worked with the courts. So that sort of area, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something to do with the involvement of materials, like an interaction between me and the world. You know, it's sort of a link between a realm of ideas and intention and the material reality around us. So it gives me a way of communicating with the world, I suppose. So that's, and I discovered I really enjoyed making things because of that, I think. Through making things, you discover design. It changed my relationship to making it. And through design, you then you recognise form and how form relates to function, and how the things that we make can actually fit in with our needs in life, just to live. On lots of different levels, really, whether it's just purely for entertainment's sake or whether it is a genuine, life need, like carrying or storage or something to help us make life easier. So yeah, so design I found very important. Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely, because students, I've seen complete changes in people that have come into my classes, from people who were not really sure what they wanted to find or what they wanted to get out of it, to people who continued making things for several years because they became fascinated and they actually found a direction. And I think with that interaction, it gave them grounds in which they could personally grow, they could evolve a little bit in some way. So during those years of involvement, they found more confidence and more ideas as well, and were able to do something for themselves, because I think that's something that's denied us these days, really. Oh, that's essential, really, because a student, when they come to a class, usually doesn't understand what they're there for, even. But I mean, some people, they have a lead in, like they want to make a plate, or they want to make a box, or they want to make a bust, they want to make a sculpture, but even then they don't understand what that means, what's behind that. And I think a teacher is very important, for one, to help them understand the materials that are being used, because understanding materials will give them much easier access to attaining their aims. And another one is actually relating what they're doing to a much bigger picture, to life itself, really, so that what they are doing is related to everyone else and everything else, and it's not just a narrow avenue for themselves. Oh yes, yeah. Well, it's particularly that. I think it gives people a sense of self-confidence and gives them a direction, gives them something to build on, gives them an area in which they feel as though they can grow. They can, the more you're involved in a craft, the more ideas you get, the more you're able to develop your own skills. And this comes naturally. It's nothing, I think, that has to be forced. It can come in their own time. It depends what system they're being taught in, really. But it is a route to growth for the individual. So it's essential, really, in my mind. If you don't have something you can grow on, I mean, where are you? You know. I think craft still has an essential place because the robotics and high-tech world is fine, but it's way beyond most people's means to actually become involved in the background or the making of or involving with. Whereas craft is to do with elements, really, and the elemental levels, really. So like ceramics is just earth, air, fire and water. You know, it's elements that you're working with, so they're immediately at hand. You don't have to figure out what a capacitor does or what, you know, because these are already things that have been made by others. So it's something where people can go to immediately and achieve something fairly soon, fairly quickly, without having to study too much. And I find it's not as specialised, really, as well, because it's knowledge and information that you can transpose into your own arena. You don't have to be working for somebody. You know, you might start that way, but it actually gives you enough skills that you can transfer them and use them for yourself. And so it's something that people can't take away from you either when you have that knowledge, that ability that you develop through craft. Oh yes, no, it's a way of interacting into society, into a social network, because people become interested in what you make, and people often want to buy what you make if it's good enough, you know, or if it fits their lives, and you can share. I've even worked with blind people who have used ceramics to help them interact more with the world around them, which was a surprise for me, really. But that's the way they use their interaction with ceramics, and I thought that was wonderful. You know, that was great. But it's a way of linking on to the world and enriching the world around you too, really. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I've been working within the industry for 30 odd years, and I've seen the government-supported resources for crafts actually diminish quite a lot. You know, so it's as though the government doesn't have the funding to support this sort of activity. So in some ways, out of that, I've seen a lot of private industries grow, which seem to be still supplying the need that people have to want to make something, to want to have crafts. So I think craftspeople are usually ingenious enough to develop sort of sidelines for others, or people will come to them and ask advice, and then will be making themselves. To help it, I don't know. We can only promote ourselves, really, I think, as individuals, and encourage others where we see they want to be encouraged, or where we see we can help. But I wouldn't, I don't know. I often find in schools and things like that, maybe that the students aren't ready for it. You know, they go through the course, but it doesn't mean anything to them. And I think it's often when the need arises, or when people are a little bit older, they realise the value of something like that they turn towards it, and then they want to learn something. So I would support any small industry that would offer access for people to join in, or maybe take lessons, or to learn more about the craft.
Nice.
Well, I found people come to me because they want something, they want, so it's a commission, right? They can't do it themselves, so they would like to use me as their pencil, their machine, if you like, so that I would make it for them because I have the skills. Now, I'm not them, so I don't see exactly what they've got in their head, or I don't know their world, so I don't know exactly what they want. But between us, we seem to, through drawing mainly, we communicate and get a design together. And also through the work that I make, they're able to see the type of thing that I can produce, so that they're not asking me to do something that's not possible for me. And then I would go ahead and make maybe a maquette or a small piece or an example or something and show them. So in that sense, the craftsperson could play a role for other people, so that people commission them. But this is part of history anyway. I mean, the craftsperson, the artist, has always played that role. This is nothing new, is it? We tend to go to the carpenter if we want a door fitted, or we tend to go to the potter if we want a teapot or something. So I think that's already in place to affect in terms of design, which is changing, having a new idea about something and how it was. I'm not sure how that would work, because quite often I find most of my good ideas come out of working with the materials in the first place and seeing how the materials work, and then how they could work for me. So it's usually the materials that come first, and the ideas and the design comes as a result of the experience of the materials. But for others it might be very different, because there must be lots of different ways of working. I mean, if that's the case, I mean, there are many people around I know who heads are full of ideas and would love to be able to just commission lots of people to have their ideas come, and then they would have the money, and then they don't have to work that hard. You see, it's those people that have to work hard. And I'm not sure how fair that is, really, and I'm not sure if I really support that. If they've got the time, but quite often their own lives are already full with something else, isn't it? If somebody, if it's it would be a joint piece of work then, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be by one individual. It would be a commission or a piece which has been developed by 2, 3 people, 4 people. You could have a number of people in an idea, I suppose. I think that would be more almost like an installation, really, if you like. If it related to something very practical, like I saw with some of your pieces, like a playground or a community space, then that could work very well. Yeah. I mean, it can be a group. It can be a pooling of ideas. That ideas can be put together from many different sources to actually change space, or to create new environments, new objects.
And then collaborate with a professional.
You'd need the professional to do the finished piece, wouldn't you? Or to do the details, because they wouldn't understand, they wouldn't know how to take it that far. Whether it's metalwork or woodwork or ceramic or whatever craft it is, glass, fabric. It's
Okay.
Monitor yourself. Just take care, because the digital age has a lot of traps in it, and do everything in moderation, so long as you're enjoying yourself, though, and follow your heart. Follow the things that you're interested in. I think. Really interested, not just what you expect or what you're told, or even your ideals in some ways. There's lots of traps around, but it's worth pursuing.
probably try to find a way how to change the appreciation of material in objects in terms of woodworking, and try to think how could be a construction look like from a chair or from a table, that it's like possible that customers can work closer together with the master, with the professional.
Would this be customizing? Do you understand customizing?
Yeah.
So this is designing something to suit an individual situation, really. So it's not necessarily for mass production, but it's customizing is something else, isn't it? It's to fit. Maybe somebody is born with a deformity, or you know, has had an accident, so has to suddenly find a different way to relate to a space, you know. And so in that sense, you need to work together, whether it's
more rather to tackle the idea of buying cheap materials or cheap furniture, to have something like a counterpart to this idea of mass consumption, and an idea or try to keep the costs low and trigger, in the other hand, the appreciation and the understanding of the product. Like IKEA is a little bit like you buy the material and you put the pieces at home together.
Yeah.
This is already that the company shifts some work to the customer. But I was wondering, can we use this also in terms of crafts, in local crafts? Because IKEA is industry, and I thought, how could we maybe split up working processes in a cabinetry and make them accessible for a customer which might want to save money, to have a good quality product, but also not that much of money. So how can we give people access to good quality products even if they don't have much money? And I thought maybe they can contribute some work in order to make it cheaper but still have a good quality product. But there needs to be changed the apprenticeship, there needs to be changed the work process and also the products. So in order to integrate the customer, needs a lot of changes. Not that you can just apply it.
No.
But
Well, I find when people start crafts, I mean, they come into, say, a class, and they have a very naive vision of you know, things, and so when they make something, it looks like a school child has made it, just a child has made it, because in a sense, that's the level they're at with that material, because they haven't grown up yet with that material. They've only just started, so they would be at a child's level, even though they might be 45, 50. They're still at a child's level, really, because they haven't actually thought or handled the material itself. So, but if they're older, it doesn't take long for them to understand about aesthetic or balance or design or whatever, so that they begin to refine what they do to make it look a bit more mature. It doesn't have to be more geometric or more balanced. It just has to be more mature, more sort of finished, more thought out. So, but when they initially start, they will be at the same level as somebody who hasn't done anything before, like a child. And so their product awareness is of a child, really, and they have to slowly grow, you know, which they do. If they come to classes, they grow. And some people surprise themselves, you know, because they didn't realize that they had it in them to do that, you know. And so that's the, I don't know, that's the transformation that can take place when you make things, I suppose. But that's what I was talking about growing or changing. But because we are all like plants, really, we're all in a process of movement and of developing, whether we know it or not. Some of us might feel as though we're going backwards. Some of us might feel as though we've stopped, or some of us are still going on. But there's the potential in us to keep growing and to keep changing, and crafts plays an enormous role within that thing. But equally, so can video games, and so can, you know, other types of technology nowadays, because they offer inroads, you know, but they're paths that have already been set down. They're already laid down. They're already designed, and people buy them, pick them up, and get involved with them and be absorbed by them. But it's not them growing, really. They're being taken by somebody else, something else, into another area, which isn't necessarily them, but it offers a route which they can somehow, I don't know, hang on to, grip onto. And it all gets down to philosophies and things like this, doesn't it? Because, you know, people need something to hold on to. You know, they need a sense of, I don't know, being here, or an identity of some sort. And so, you know, crafts can offer that because there's that interaction with materials. You know, a lot of people that come into the class, you can tell that they don't react to, you know, they haven't got an interaction with the world around them because they're very nervous about what they're doing and they've got no confidence in handling things. A workman, however, somebody who builds a house or digs the road or something, he's quite confident, you know, because handling materials isn't a problem for him. But many people are divorced from that sort of relationship to the world around them. They don't know how to handle materials. But there again, some people come in and they don't realise what's inside them, and they discover it as they continue to go on, and then they realise actually they've got very good sense of proportion or taste or whatever it is, and they're producing things which everyone's going, wow, you know, that's interesting, or that's nice, how did you do that? And they all don't know, you know, and they're sort of, they get a real buzz out of it. But they didn't realise that was in them. They didn't think that anything like that was going to happen. But then that's nice, you know. So it can be a road to self-awareness, if you like, which is just personally so enriching, isn't it? I mean, I think the creative spirit is something that everyone needs a taste of somewhere. But I don't know if it's collaborative, if you're trying to get interacting, you know, industry with the community and trying to get them to work closer together somehow. I mean, it's great. All sorts of access, whether it's assembling things like IKEA, or whether it's actually workshops, you know, in the industry, so that people can come in and learn a little bit. So industry itself could actually share some of the skills that they use, but they might be too technical or they might be too high tech anyway, because a lot of industries nowadays are actually built on a high tech.
Yeah, or maybe not just industry, maybe also just the craftsmen, the smaller workshops, because the idea is also like to support the smaller workshops and not let them die somehow.
Oh yeah,
and not like not necessarily related to the industry, to find maybe an alternative to the industry, because maybe the robots are taking over and then we don't need much people in the industry, so it's maybe a need to think about how can we keep the smaller workshops alive, which are bearing so much of value.
Well, yeah. There was 2 years when I was running something called the Open Studios, and we had an Open Studios scheme for Thanet, for this area, for this district, where I would artists who have got workshops, who have got studio space, would open the doors to the public and come in. And I was really supportive of this. I said, this is great, you know, because then people would talk about their work, and it's always nice to understand somebody from seeing the environment that they work in, and also asking them questions about, well, why are you making stuff like this, you know, like, so I was very supportive of that, and I sort of helped develop that over a couple of years. But then I had to finish it because I had a studio of my own and I wanted to participate more myself rather than running it. And but there's very few people that have studios that are big enough or active enough to allow others to participate within their space, because most artists and most people are very poor. You know, most of those craftspeople or artists are quite poor, and they just use their own house or their front room or whatever space they've got, a garden space. And so it's very difficult for them to share with others what they're doing. You know,
you mean with others in this event, or in terms of
the craft in terms of what they're making
Yeah.
and their area of work.
Mm.
You know, so they can't. It's very difficult for them to share that somehow. I mean, somehow they've gained their skills from someone else, though, and a few of them came through colleges. Most of them had gone to classes. So at least, you know, they've been through some systems, some structures, because there's not many apprenticeships around these days. You know. I was lucky. I found a teacher, I suppose. It was within an adult education institute, but we became very good friends because we spoke the same language, really. So we actually then built a studio together, and then I was designing and building kilns, even, you know. So we were firing and doing interesting firings, and then exploring a bigger world of ceramics than even he had known. And so we were able to pursue our own interests a lot more together. So he wasn't just a teacher in the end. It was sort of like a partnership that would explore a bit. And that sort of relationship is perfect, really, but it doesn't open the doors to everyone, does it? It's very minimal, but at least you get the people that are interested in sharing that with the community. And I mean, being a community-based artist or person in the first place, so that's what I did. So I set up wherever I was, whatever job I was in. I had a pottery section to a social centre, a community centre. So we had a kiln, and I took a wheel in, you know, and we had workshops there. But then I was doing everything there that I could, you know, to stimulate creative activity. And so we were doing anything from printing to crafts, or woodwork, to film, you know, to theatre. There was somebody else doing dance. So there's lots of different things going on there.
Yeah, which is quite interesting, quite important. Yeah.
No, I support work towards young people, because the young people are the future, aren't they? They're the ones that will carry the future forward. And if they can find an interest, which is vital, an interest other than social networking, or other than, you know, just the internet, then it's better for them, really. That'll link them to the community better, I think. I don't know. The future is sort of strange in a way, isn't it? Because when we look at a digital future, the whole landscape of community changes, and I'm not really familiar with that too much. You know, I'm still very low tech, I suppose. So that's where I come from.
Yeah, but there's also a place or a need for low tech.
Well, yeah, I hope so.
I guess overall is quite complex.
Yeah, but there's also, I mean, there's a fear of high tech. You know, there's a fear of the future, or there's a fear of change quite often. You know, and I don't find that's always fully grounded, or it's not always, you know, because we can also learn from our discoveries, because it's only other people who are interested in the same sort of thing that have discovered those new ways of doing things, or a new way of making something, or a cheaper way of achieving something, a new idea. So I don't want to say that it's bad, because it's not necessarily so. You know?
Yeah. What bad is, I think it's like that people which don't have much money or don't can afford it, that they have to stick on these mass-produced furnitures which are actually supporting the idea of mass consumption and mass production, and that they not have a chance to have an alternative.
There's lots of nice ideas about it, and quite often they're spread on the internet, actually. You know, just even things like, you know, there's certain areas of interest on the internet where there's just lots of photographs of things shown, so unshared, and they might choose something like, I mean, in England we have pallets, you know, they're just wooden crates that are used for delivering, you know, things, and these you know, the different ways of using pallets are enormous and many, you know. And I think I always remember working with young people in a community centre. The most creative training you could have, or the most creative play you could have, was if you just use something like cardboard boxes, you know, and say, you know, how many different things what can we do with cardboard boxes? You know, just take something that's maybe already in existence, which isn't needed so much, and then showing a different way of using it, which actually provides creative play or even structures or ideas come out of that. And I think sometimes recycled, you know, things for furnishing is a good idea, or to at least get people thinking like that. I think would be a good idea. That's just one way of, you know, because you know, that's just one area of possibility which doesn't involve too much commerce, I suppose, because there's rubbish is being dumped by the side of the road every day. And if there was different ways of recycling our rubbish, you know, it would be so much more valuable. And to actually, I mean, we now see houses built of old car tyres, I suppose. You can build walls and ways of building things out of straw bales and things. You know, there's lots of different ways of doing things. And I think the more we can spread that information around, maybe the more versatile our own thinking will be. You know, when we see something or when we need something, we don't feel so restricted. We don't have to we don't have to save up for 20 years before we can get it. We can actually achieve it in a different way. But that brings the need and the cost together a bit closer, I suppose. And that's also, so recycling is a positive area of growth, but I'm sure there's other areas too.
That's a challenge. The challenge also in terms of you're running out of resources.
God, yeah.
And or
destroying other areas of the planet just because we still demand the same resources. You know, and just it's terrifying what is going on when most of the news is so negative, isn't it, when you're reading about that type of thing? But then all news is sort of negative these days. There are some positive things out there, but you have to look a bit harder for them. But yes, it's something that's definitely needed, and if that type of thing is taught within schools, within education, which is, you know, to get kids thinking in a different way, that'd be great. It'd be ideal. But I mean, a couple of school teachers that I've spoken to, they say, well, things have changed, and things are changing because it's so long since I was in the educational system. You know, I'm not really involved in it anymore. You just hope that teachers who are there now are able to, you know, make these changes, you know, to make it a bit more relevant to today's world. But I don't know. You can't do everything. There was little moments, wasn't there, where there was, there were times when they suddenly realised how to do something because you struggle for a while, and then it usually only takes one little move that's slightly different, or I can say something, and they, oh yeah, you know, this is how it works, or this is, and it's an understanding, it's a grasping, and that's just, yes, and that makes them feel good, because they can do it. It's not as uncontrollable, it's not out of control, it's within their grasp. They just have to, this is learning, this is developing a skill towards the material. The material has demands and you have to comply in some ways. It's not quite as bad as that.
That's why the teacher is so important, because we have this DIY scene that there are like templates and ideas out there what they can do and what they can download online and do it by themselves. But there is maybe a frustration into it, because if they do it by themselves, they maybe not succeed. But if, as you said, if there is a teacher which gives little tricks and little ideas how to make it better, then there's a better potential to make it really good and to have this effect of, wow, I can do it even with less effort.
Well, that personal interaction is so valuable, because there's an awful lot of education online these days, isn't there, I suppose, and We have something called Open University, and a lot of that is done online, so you don't have any direct interaction. You're assimilating information and putting it together and posting it off to get it assessed, but there's no direct communication. And it's not very practical. Usually it's just intellectual. It's not craft based. It would be sort of just information based product, and whether industry needs to be closer to community awareness, really, because then people would understand more about the nature of factory or making, as well as finding that there's something in it. It's within their environment, and there's something of educational value for themselves that can be offered through it. You know.
For the industry, you mean? Or?
I don't. You know, it would need specialised people to go into that industrial sort of structure to look at the whole structure, the whole planning, and then sort of say, well, you know. But I don't know. I mean, industry needs to be open to those ideas, doesn't it? Because quite often people can't afford to change that. I mean, they're struggling as it is, aren't they, really?
Yeah, of course. The affording problem is also like with the food and with the furniture. They cannot afford, so they have no chance. No choice.
No choice. No, that's right. Yeah, there's not enough space, not enough money around to change and do other things. It's yeah. But it's definitely that sort of social side, because I don't know. I found within the class here, some of the nicest moments that I've had here have been where the group actually begins to relate through the work and what we're doing to each other so well that you sort of you see it's also got a social value. And it's not just the object itself. It's the struggles and the learning process that everyone has to go through, no matter what they're doing. So it doesn't even have to relate to what you're doing here. It could be something that they've done at home, or what's happening outside, or a problem that they've had. But it can be shared, and they relate to each other more, and so that they're able to feel not quite so alone, I guess is the word with it. So social cohesion takes place. It's sort of sharing, being able to share. Understanding or problems and dealing with problems. And so it's not just craft you're dealing with people's lives. That's what I'm trying to say, I suppose. So.
Yeah, maybe we even can learn from the crafts and from the collaboration of which takes place in crafts and in the coexistence of the customer and the teacher and the student and the teacher, and learn how maybe even sociology and design can collaborate. Because if we want to change something in our society, to me, from my point of view, it's really necessary also to collaborate with psychology and sociology. Because as a designer, we cannot just make a structure and say, okay, this should work, without knowing people and without knowing how the process works.
Yeah. Well, in fact, it doesn't. I mean, for me, ceramics it gave me a route to understand history. The whole structure of civilizations going right the way through, because virtually every civilization had some sort of link with ceramics. And the history of ceramics follows every twist and turn that culture and society and civilization has taken. And some roots in ceramics came to an end because that culture died, but the ceramics continued, and that was then brought into mainstream. And gradually mainstream sort of is where we are now, really. But I learned more through ceramics than I did through school, because it told me more about history. Because I was interested, it's the ceramic, it was the pots, or it was the techniques, and I could understand the techniques, But just to be told something pulled out of history, this happened in 1627, and that happened, and that was going. I needed a framework in which I could work on. My interest in ceramics, my relationship to ceramics, which had to evolve first, then gave me a foundation to understand or to see a whole development of the planet, really, of the human planet, anyway. But it also can take you into geology. It depends how your mind works, because that everything in ceramics is related to geology, So that takes you into the movement of the whole planet, you know, the earth and elements and things. And ceramics is vast. I mean, I haven't really even started getting involved with glass, you know, and that's a whole section of ceramics, you know. And I just, you know, hang on, let's stay put here. And yeah, but it goes through fashion, style, art, technology, philosophy, ways of thinking, and you know, takes you everywhere. You know, so but I think I believe any interest, if someone's really interested in something, they're going to find that. They're going to find it's okay. Well, it is an interest, but actually it relates to you know, millennia of history and millennia of human development. And so yeah. But I, you know, and I like other people to explore that a bit as well, you know, so that they begin to get the feeling of, you know, it's okay, we're making pots, but actually it relates to something much bigger than just making a pot. You know, it's everything, but it's nothing.